Hello everybody, today is November the 13th, 2012. My name is Nicholas Eubanks and you're listening to Eubanks on America. I do apologize for my absence in the past couple of days. We've been really busy and I've been a guest on Dick Klondike's show as well, which you should definitely take a look at. And now here's tonight's story. Okay. For the United States and its allies are gearing up for a new push to unify the Syrian opposition and toppled President Bush or al-Assad. They're looking to exploit battlefield gains by the rebels and change the trajectory of the conflict before Syria collapses into a patchwork of local fief times and violence opposition, rather than seeps beyond Syria's borders for. With the U.S. election out of the way, and growing concerns about the rise of the hottest groups within Syria, Western powers are now engaging groups fighting inside Syria rather than exiled and a sexual Syrian National Council. But some ago, amid the food is a safe zone status of the good and is of when the opposition confirmed for an interim government. The U.S. and British diplomats are concerned over last year that new initiatives has been yielded by countries like Turkey, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and to non-state actors from countries like Libya. The event things that among the most of those beginnings of a fascinating me is if that savannahs and sending weapons. For that then as soon as the user wants no part or sooner of or. Then also is the growing anxiety about the number of a plea rose worse, many men deterring crisis with fuel and fuels or shortages come out by clothing and an F in access for those most in need. Here are 5 signs that the landscapes in the conflict is changing. One of the U.S. has abandoned National Cereal Council. After 18 months of internal squabbing and the apparition with a group, since I've said ZSNC is finally surplus to require. 2 of the opposition has gotten a makeover, 7 days of meetings that ended Sunday. The Serbian opposition only reinforced its reputation for bickering. That says in the elected new executive forum, members a man with them has at least the complexion of a sign to some observers that was increasingly a vehicle for Muslim Brotherhood. But eventually, after badgering from the kit, as it was Sat and the bully, there were Western diplomats agreed to join the new structure that gives activists inside of recently departed from Sarah Bigar and trusted Clinton had demanded. For more in that influence behind anybody in that leak of the National Coalition of Forces for Survey Revolution and Opposition has been Riyadh Ha, and some of the governments, especially the United States, took as someone who could unite the opposition. Says the famine, as this is then about spent much from the NASDAQ, and it is good for the front row intent that the top of them is to add that must attend a moderate cleric who has a presence of attack. Those 5th and 5th inning and agent last summer deputies who has a lot of fancy about move and said most of his fashion of tunes just as prominent a role of a signal of the new ships that have let's have a say in secular complexion. But that it said Monday, the intention of ensued in the defendant is unlikely to yield results before winter fish and is not likely to lack the FM 1000 Syrian refugees to take the chance to return home. More than 9,000 custom turkey one day last week in the day and quail hunter and worsened their already precarious situation if the millions of civilians are still at home, showed the fish shortages of the flow and fueled. According to the United Nations agency, and there are at least 1.2 million internally displaced Syrians of the 2.5 million then the help. Neither the latest initiatives put a stop to the wholesale destruction across the suburbs of Damascus and several cities of Informs and of the heart of El Cap, moved by hand and look good in the north. Whole neighborhoods have been razed. For 51 video posted last Sunday and Wednesday that show direct school and home of the suburb Damascus. Another set of photographs published in The Atlantic includes scenes of reminiscent of Stalingrad or Do His Stand. It is extremely difficult to estimate the cost of reconstruction of this area, of the homes, Cisco's hospitals, pipelines, and highways also found a fund post-revolutionary institutions. The changes in Gaza and the last few weeks did not mean the imminent end of the Assad regime. Perhaps a better way of putting it is tough that the instant rigid disk that defeat the Axis forces in North Africa in November 1942. Now, this is not the end of the beginning, but perhaps the end of the B and 5 freshmen, much as have a good evening. And on that note, I'd like to thank you all, and thank you for listening, and have a great evening.